where we are studying. Good morning, welcome to today's Tanya class, where we are studying the Tanya, which is deep Torah wisdom. This is God's gift to mankind, and we are studying the inner dimension, the soul of Torah, which is the essence of Chabad. Chabad is a philosophy. It is the soul of Torah. That is the meaning of Chabad. And that's what we're learning today. Today we're going to be learning about the meditation of the Tallis and how we are supposed to approach our divine service, our service of God. You know, what you may have learned in Hebrew school or in casual Judaism is, you got to go through the motions. This is what you do and this is what you don't do. Shabbat, there's sort of mitzvahs you do once a week, sort of mitzvahs you do once a year, sort of mitzvahs you do once a lifetime. There's other mitzvahs you do every day, and like the Tallis, the tefillin, and maybe we don't pay too much attention to them. Or maybe we do. But Tanya exposes the light, shines the light of the soul of Torah on what we're doing, why we're doing it, in a way that can become much more personal, much more meaningful, and much more relevant. I'd like to welcome Rabbi and Marty joining me here on Facebook. Someone else is on YouTube, I can't tell who. And anyone else that's with us here on Facebook or YouTube, thank you for joining us here this morning. Whether you're with us live or you're with us later, it's a pleasure to study Torah with you. I see Lawrence just joined us. Shalom, Lawrence. And here we go. We're learning Tanya and Ed. We're learning Tanya chapter 41. If you have the book, this is it. The Practical Tanya by Chaim Miller. You can get a copy here at the Chabad if you'd like, 561-624-2223. And we're in the book of Tanya. We're on page 500 of the book of Tanya. We started this course at the very beginning of Tanya, chapter 1. Now we're up to chapter 41. You can find most of those classes online at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. That's youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. And we're going to go straight into the meditation of the Tallis, pursuant to our meditation of the Tefillin last week. I'll do a quick recap. I'd like to welcome Stephanie and Ed and Corey and Marty. I love your metaphor: scuba diving Judaism versus snorkeling into Judaism. It's a beautiful metaphor, great analogy of what the Tanya is. So let's go deep. Now, what the Tanya is doing in chapter 41 is introducing us to a mature approach to serving God, as opposed to one which is a knee-jerk reaction, as opposed to one which is a routine approach to Judaism, something which is just lifeless, or maybe casual, or drive-by Judaism. If you're going to take this seriously, if you're going to establish a meaningful and personal relationship with God, with the master of the universe, then there's a method. And that method is what the Tanya guides us through. This is not an invention of the Tanya. He continuously quotes from the Zohar and from the Torah. Zohar is the book of Kabbalah, the essence of Torah. He's quoting from the internal part of Torah and from the revealed part of Torah to be able to present to us Torah guidance, the will of God, as to how we can establish a meaningful relationship with God. What we've learned in the past 3 sessions, I think this is part 4 of chapter 41, is that there is no way to approach God without first coming in with reverence. First, before love, you must begin with reverence. And that was the opening of chapter 41, which is foundational text of Judaism, something which I encourage you to meditate upon every single morning or every time that you daven. Before you pray, you should meditate upon those lines. We spoke about them. They appear in this textbook, in this Tanya book, at the bottom of page 496. Bottom of 496 is where you'll find that meditation, which is the general approach to Judaism. You see, we generally tend to think that something has to mean something to me, something has to inspire me or excite me before I can engage with it. And you're probably right, if you're dealing with something which is within your realm, something within your league. If something is within your league, then you should only engage with it if it excites you or interests you. But when something is by definition beyond your league, when you're dealing with the master of the universe, the creator of all of existence, the infinite being, the only being that truly exists, versus yours truly, we are just finite beings with a finite life and a finite body, and there's nothing we can do about the fact that we have to eventually all die. When the moment you have the humility to accept the fact that you're dealing here with establishing a relationship with God Almighty, you'll realize that there is no other way to do it other than with awe, with reverence. Because if you're beginning with love, as they say, WIFM is what they tell me. WIFM is an acronym for what's in it for me. What's in it for me? If you begin with that attitude of WIFM, what's in it for me, maybe there's nothing in it for you. I mean, truthfully, there is a lot in it for you, because when you think about it, you are a finite being. And for a finite being to experience true infinity, I think I spoke about this in the previous class, to be able to truly reinvent yourself and go above and beyond. Yeah, I did. I spoke about the idea of avoda and why a person would want to serve God in the first place. Because you realize that in order for me to be able to reinvent myself and to break my glass ceiling, to be able to go beyond being immortal and experience immortality, beyond being a creation and to be incorporated within the Creator. It's not about myself being controlled by God as much as it is about myself being incorporated within God. It's about me letting go and letting God. It's about me stopping the flow of God's light and allowing it to shine through me. But in order to be able to reach such a level, you first have to realize that you're dealing with something which is profound. And the 3 steps of that meditation we spoke about were, first of all, to recognize that God is the master of the universe, so He is almighty. And then we said to how He actually cares and is engaged with the earth all the time. We spoke about the doctrine of perpetual creation. God needs to be engaged all the time. And then step 3, we said He wants still a personal relationship. This almighty and all-powerful and ever-present God cares about us human beings. And who does He care about specifically? You and me. And that was the meditation we said. And look, God is standing over you and all the earth is filled with His glory. And what's He doing? He's watching you. He's checking your inclinations in your heart to see if you're worshiping Him properly. That was the general approach to divine service. Because if you start serving God because of how it makes you feel, then it's not about God, it's all about you. But if you serve God because of the greatness of God, then it's about God and it's not about you. You know, somebody asked me about a conversion. You know, if you want to convert for marriage reasons, for peace in your marriage, or for a more stable relationship with your partner, is that really about God? Is that about the conversion, or is that about you and your peace at home? Obviously, it's the latter, and therefore it's an insincere conversion. It's not acceptable. Your conversion has to be for no ulterior motives other than for God. If you're not converting for God, then you're setting yourself up for a very uncomfortable situation. Converting for the wrong reasons, you ultimately will come to resent the lifestyle that you've now officially committed yourself to, and you're setting yourself up for failure. It's not acceptable. So the first approach to a meaningful and functional relationship with God is a general attitude of awe. But then we spoke about last week about the meditation of the tefillin, and we explained that the meditation of the tefillin is about taking that general idea and making it personal. We spoke about, and you can hear this class at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. Again, that's youtube.com/Jewish Gardens to hear the Tanya class in chapter 41, part 3, where we spoke about ensuring that how the tefillin ensures that the idea, the awareness, the reverence, the meditation of God's presence is not something which is just an idea that's objective, but something which is personal. By putting on the tefillin, we spoke about the 4 paragraphs of Torah, each of which mention the tefillin, and those 4 paragraphs are inside of the head tefillin in individual compartments, and they're inside the arm tefillin in one compartment. Those 4 paragraphs correspond to the 3 levels of Chabad: Chachma, Bina, and Das. We explained this at length last week. Chachma is idea, conception. Bina is comprehension, and Das is realization, making it personal. Das is taking an idea that you understand in your head and making it something that you feel in your heart through meditating upon it. Those 4 paragraphs of the Shema, the 4 paragraphs of the Tefillin correspond to those 3 steps of intellect: Chachma, Bina, and Das. And since Das, realization, is one that makes you feel in the heart what you understand in your head, therefore it automatically gives birth to the 2 main emotions that are love and fear, love and awe. So really, we explained that Tefillin, the 4 paragraphs of the Tefillin, relate to Chachma and Bina, idea and understanding, and then to Das and its derivatives, to realization and its derivatives, love and awe. So the Tefillin, the act of laying the Tefillin, brings the light of God upon our highest faculties, upon our intellect, and upon our emotion. To make it something from objective to subjective, to make it something from impersonal to personal. When you actually go through a motion, the meditation becomes meaningful. It's no longer an abstract, disconnected idea. It's now tethered. It's now personalized. It's now personally meaningful to me when you lay the tefillin. And today, we're going to talk about what happens when you lay the Tallis. That's the next part of chapter 41. I'm trying to slow this down a little bit in chapter 41 because it's so densely packed. I just want to, we spoke about how the first 40 chapters of Tanya were introducing us to the generalities of our soul and our presence in the universe, our role in the universe. But chapter 41 through 50 speak about how we can generate true feelings for God. True feelings for God. That's an amazing achievement. I mean, do you have feelings for God? You have feelings for your spouse, I imagine. You have feelings for your children, I imagine. Do you have feelings for God? Or is your relationship with God on the level of a 3rd grader? Or maybe a 1st grader? Are you observing preschool Judaism? Or are you in college grade Judaism? Is your spirituality stunted? Or is your spirituality soaring? That's what Tanya is doing for us in chapter 41 through 50, which is why I'm slowing it down just so that we can take it slow in bite-sized pieces. The meditation of the Tallis, just before I get into the meditation of the Tallis, I think it was Corey who asked a question at the end of last week. Good morning, Dean and Mickey. Welcome. Corey asked a question. It was Corey. She asked a question at the end of last week's class when we spoke about the Tallis and the Tefillin, about what about women? How do women experience these meditations of Tallis and Tefillin? So, first of all, whilst the actual mitzvah of Tallis and Tefillin doesn't apply to women specifically, the Rebbe Rashab, the 5th Chabad Rebbe, writes that the Tallis and Tefillin is like weapons of war. It's a tool. It's a means. It's not the ends. So just because men typically go out to war and not women, that doesn't mean that women don't need to celebrate freedom, don't need to experience freedom. The purpose of war is in order to bring freedom. So just because the women don't engage necessarily in the weapons of war, that doesn't mean that they're not there to experience and enjoy and celebrate freedom. Obviously they are, right? So the essence of the Tallis and Tefillin, the purpose and the goal of the Tallis and Tefillin, which is a meaningful emotional relationship with God, that certainly is applicable to women. And just because they don't do it through the tools of Tallis and Tefillin, it doesn't mean that is not relevant to them. Of course it is. Yet elsewhere in Chassidus, it's explained that the women actually connect to Tallis and Tefillin through encouraging the men of their lives to use them. Women are very influential and very motivating to the men of their lives. And when a woman encourages her husband or her son or her brother or father or something to wake up early, to go to shul, to go to minyan, to lay the tefillin, to turn on the Zoom, to do whatever they need to do. And laying the Tallis and tefillin, they themselves are also experiencing that as well. When a wife waits for her husband or encourages him, that is her participation in the mitzvah. And therefore, women are certainly engaged very much in the mitzvah, whilst might not be direct involvement, it certainly is as part of her role, as part of her husband. Just like a husband lights Shabbos candles through his wife. Just like a husband experiences the mitzvahs of mikveh or the mitzvahs of challah through his wife. So to the woman experiences the mitzvah through her other half. I hope that answers your question. Maybe it wasn't you, Corey. Sorry, I thought, and then maybe it was Elaine. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I always welcome your comments and questions over here. Please post your comments and questions to the chat box on Facebook or on YouTube. And if you're watching later, then you can always email me to rabbi@jewishgardens.com. That's rabbi@jewishgardens.com. Don't forget to like the video. Hope you like it. And to share the video so we can share the light of Torah, the soul of Torah, with as many of our fellow Jews as possible. And here we start with today's meditation, which is the meditation of the Tallis. So what is the Tallis about? Now that we've already spoken about the general approach to a relationship with God, which needs to be not on my terms, but on God's terms, recognizing God's greatness and my awe in his presence, as opposed to my closeness and my wanting to relate to God, which would make it all about me. So once we've started the initial meditation, the general approach to godliness, and then we spoke about the tefillin last week, which was making that meditation personal, making that meditation conscious, connecting our higher faculties, our intellect and emotion with God. And now comes the Tallis. And what does the Tallis do? The Tallis wraps us, envelops us quite literally. All of our being is incorporated within the Tallis. It literally wraps up our entire body, which might be a good moment to share that the scarf Tallisim, the Tallis that looks like a little string that goes around your neck, it's not a kosher Tallis. A Tallis is not a scarf. When you wear a scarf Tallis, that's not a Tallis. I don't know what it is, but it's not a Tallis. A Tallis is something that that covers the majority of your back. It's a four-cornered garment with tassels of tzitzis on the edges of each of the four corners. And it has to cover the majority of your back. And if you don't yet have a real Tallis, then buy one. Buy a real Tallis. If you don't have one, then call the Chabad here, and we can order one for you. Ashley will get one for you, 561-624-2223. Again, that's 561-624-2223. A Tallis is something that envelops your entire being. When you put on the Tallis, what you do is that you hold it up. It's hard for me to illustrate, but you basically put it over between your eyes and your mouth. And then you grab the corners and you fold it up like this. You're literally enveloped in all of the Tallis. Your head, your heart, your arms, even your whole body basically is enveloped inside of the Tallis. And that's how you're supposed to do. You're supposed to stand there for as long as it takes to walk 4 steps. I don't know, 10 seconds or so, 20 seconds. And it's about getting wrapped up in the presence of God. So whereas the tefillin is about connecting our higher faculties with God, the Tallis is about connecting all the rest of our faculties with God. You may recall that we have actually 5 parts to our neshama, to our souls. 5 parts to our soul. We've spoken about this many times, that through the 3 lower parts are inside of our body, and the 2 higher parts are transcendent from our body. And that's why we daven 3 times a day, corresponding to the 3 parts of our soul that are inside of our body: nefesh, ruach, neshama, which might translate as spirit, wind, and soul. Those are the 3 parts of the soul that are within us. And then there's Chaya Yechida, which is life and essence that is transcendent. On Yantiv, which is a more holy day, a day of transcendence, we make a 4th prayer called Musaf, because we're accessing a higher level of our soul. And only once a year, we add a 5th prayer, the day of Yom Kippur, when we reach the essence. It is a day of atonement, which I like to call the day of at-one-ment, the day when we become one with our essence, with our God, with our source, with our God. So it's corresponding to these 3 soul levels, nefesh, ruach, neshama. Those 3 soul levels correspond to action, emotion, and intellect. Nefesh is action, ruach is emotion, neshama is intellect. So whereas the tefillin allows our higher faculties, our intellect and emotion, neshama and ruach, to connect with Hashem, it is the Tallis that takes it all the way down to ground zero, down to our action. It is a physical deed that envelops us entirely and involves all of our being to be incorporated within the presence of God, where we literally stand humbled before the awesome power of God Almighty. That is the meditation of of the Tallis. When we're enwrapped, we are drawing God's kingship over us, over the entirety of our being, beyond just the intellect and emotion of the tefillin. It's like getting wrapped up in love. When you're lost in the eyes of your lover, we actually lose your sense of self as you're wrapped up in love. In this context, it's not love, we're talking about awe. But again, you're losing your sense of self as you stand in awe before the master of the universe. You know, sometimes when you stand in awe of something, you lose your sense of self entirely. Sometimes you lose your sense of seichel, of wisdom, when you're awed by somebody's wisdom. When you're standing, like, you hear something brilliant, you're like, wow, that's like amazing. You don't feel your own intellect, you feel their intellect. Sometimes you're overawed by emotion. When you maybe hear a beautiful piece of music, you feel overawed. But then sometimes you feel you're awed by something really truly magnificent. Maybe a miracle, maybe the Grand Canyon, maybe, I don't know, if you saw Noah's Ark or something, you might feel so totally in awe that you lose your sense of self. You don't even feel yourself. And that's what that Tallis is about. It's about wrapping up the entirety of our being within the presence of God. So whilst the opening meditation was a general approach to godliness through bittul in general, bittul means self-nullification, even though that's like a negative word, maybe incorporation of self within God. The tefillin made it personal in our higher faculties, and the role of the Tallis is to make it personal in all of our being. With the realization that we connect to Hashem specifically through this mitzvah, which He has commanded. This is the channel through which we connect to God. Let's take a look at this idea within the text of the Tanya. Rabbi, when Maureen and I were married, we were enveloped together in my Tallis during the recitation of the Sheva Brachas. Beautiful. So we were wrapped together in a Tallis. The idea is being wrapped together as one. Beautiful. Same idea. So you definitely connect with that idea then, Rob, in that case. Got to make sure you got to keep that oneness going, right? That's intimacy. Intimacy is into you, into me. It's about 1 + 1 = 1. That's intimacy. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. 1 + 1 = 1. When you can be incorporated as one, how could 1 + 1 = 1? Only if you're experiencing selflessness. If it's about me, my presence, my entity, my ego, plus you, your entity, your ego, then 1 + 1 = 2. But if I'm humbled and you're humbled, then 1 + 1 = 1. And that's what that Tallis is about. It's about recognizing a higher presence that envelops us entirely together, making us together as one. So in the same way that you were bonded with your wife in beautiful intimacy under that Tallis, that's how we bond every morning when we daven before God. That's what we do. We bond with God in that same exact chuppah that you're describing with Maureen. And this is what I want to encourage you to do when you come to shul, when you daven. Don't just lay your Tallis and tefillin and go straight into davening. Put your Tallis on. Put it all the way over your head. When you have your tefillin on, your Tallis is all the way over your head. At that point, I want you to just stop and just think. Just meditate upon this idea. Meditate upon the love. Picture yourself with your spouse under the chuppah. Picture yourself united with God as one, melting into God's oneness in the most beautiful union. Not a destruction of self, but an incorporation of self. Connecting, just like a cell phone is just connecting to its power source. You're plugging into your power source and you're just allowing it to flow through you, just to fill you with life and love and charge and energy and vitality. That is what's happening when you put on the Tallis. And I highly encourage you to meditate while you're wearing the Tallis. And even if in the middle of davening you want to stop and you need to catch yourself, do it. Stop. You don't need to be with the minions. Slow down. Take it easy. Relax. It's not a race to the finish line. Slow down. Meditate upon the oneness, the intimacy that you have with your spouse. And meditate how that is a metaphor for the intimacy that you have with God. And challenge yourself. What is the degree of my intimacy with my spouse? Is it 80%? Is it 90%? Is it 20%? And then ask yourself, what is the degree of my intimacy with my God? And why is there such a discrepancy? Is it because I am spiritually mature? Well, it's time for a change. Let's look at this idea, this beautiful concept, as it's discussed now in the words of the Tanya. So I'm going to move over now to page 500 as we look at this idea in the words of the Tanya. Bottom of page 500. And when you're wrapped in a tallis adorned with tzitzis, carry out the following meditation. It's somewhat perplexing that the Tanya offers this meditation for the tallis after the meditation for tefillin, when practically speaking, we put on the tallis before the tefillin. So it seems that we're speaking here of a tallis meditation after tefillin have been put on. In other words, this is a more advanced, it's a phase 2 meditation after the tefillin, where God's light is absorbed not only into your heart and mind, your higher faculties as you meditated through the tefillin, but now it goes further, but into your entire being through the tallis, as we shall soon see. Top of 501, contemplate what is written in the Zohar. This is the book of the Kabbalah, the soul of Torah. That when doing this mitzvah, you ought to draw upon yourself God's sovereign authority. I'm humbled before God as this tallis envelops and overwhelms me. I am enveloped and overwhelmed by God. The difference between phase 1 and 2 is that in phase 1, you merely accept upon yourself God's sovereign authority. I know God is great, and I know that God cares about me. Whereas in phase 2, your soul powers lose their soul separate identity and are absorbed into God's light as you become one with God. This final meditation completes this process to draw upon yourself God's light upon your whole being, enveloped in all of the tallis. All my being is enveloped in the one tallis. It's like an all-encompassing light, so that you lose your separate identity completely and are absorbed within God's light. Contemplate that even though God's authority rules over all the worlds, etc., as stated in Tehillim and Ashrei, nevertheless, he has specified his desire to be worshipped by us through the Torah. And through observing this mitzvah, your whole being will internalize this reality. By going through the motions of the mitzvah, we human beings relate to our actions. Our actions influence our meditations. Our actions, we tend to, our minds and hearts follow the actions of our hands and feet. So when you go through the motions of the tallis and the tefillin, that actually causes you to feel that. When you see somebody who's eating, we say in Yiddish, noch ein Essen, Aperitif kommt noch Essen. Appetite comes through eating. When you see someone else eating, with gusto, that's when you develop an appetite. When you see the food, that's when you develop the appetite, right? Yeah, whatever. That's the idea here. So, so the idea here is therefore that it's the action of the tallis and the tefillin that draws this meditation and awareness upon us. Most mitzvahs have a specific theme relating to a particular element of worship, but even though it's just one mitzvah, the tallis has the theme of accepting God's authority and worshiping him in general. That's because the tallis engulfs your whole body, representing the alignment of your whole body with God. So putting on the tallis is similar to the idea, you shall surely place a king over yourself. It's about accepting God's sovereign authority over you, saying, look, God, you're great. I'm humbling myself before you. I'm completely hiding my being with yours. The verse, you shall surely place a king over yourself, implies that until this point you were merely willing to have a king. God is your king. But now when wearing the tallis, you're actually entering into a full relationship with God. Friends, I do need to move on. I have a funeral to take care of, so I'm going to have to sign off right now. But I hope that you found this session meaningful. If you have any questions, do send me an email, please, rabbi@jewishgardens.com. We'd love to hear from you. That's rabbi@jewishgardens.com. And today is Tuesday. Corey gives a class in Hebrew language through the Psalms of King David at 11:30 on Zoom. That's jewishgardens.com/Zoom today at 11:30. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to have to sign off over here. We'll carry on next week with Tanya on Tuesday. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Shalom.